Welcome back. So in this video, we're going to talk about combined variations. So we're going to learn how to write direct and direct and inverse variations based on words. So the two things that you need to know are when varying directly, remember x goes with the k, okay? And then when it's varying inversely, x goes on the bottom. X is underneath k. So those are kind of the two big ideas when you're constructing these equations is just make sure you're putting the variable, in the right spot. Right, and then what do? Well, we construct the appropriate equation. Then we plug in any given values so we can solve for k, so we can figure out what k actually is. Then we put that back into the equation so we can actually write our true equation. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So first, y varies inversely with x. So inversely, so y varies, so if y is varying, that means y equals inversely with x. So when it's inverse, remember that meant you start with k and then your x is on the bottom. Inverse means you put that variable on the bottom. So when you always start with k, then you place the variable with whatever language it uses, direct or inverse. So that's going to be kind of our skeleton that we're starting with. Now, it also tells us when y is 10, k is 2, or x is 2. So let's plug that in. So when y is 10, x is going to be 2. Well, that's enough information to find k. I can just multiply that 2 over. So now not only do I have the structure of my equation, now I have my k. So my final step is taking that and putting the k in. So if k is 20, that means I can write my equation like that. And then that is actually going to be my answer. The answer is the equation. All right? So the important thing is to make sure that you make the skeleton of the equation, find k, and then put k back in. All right? So now, of course, that is the very beginnings. That's the basis of this. So you can have more than one thing varying. So here it says x varies inversely with y and directly with x. So let's set up this one. So again, I always start with what is varying. So this time z varies. So we get z equals, start with your k, and it's inversely with y. Inverse means you put it on the bottom, and directly with x. Directly means you put it up with the k. So this time, that is going to be my structure, okay? And again, you always just place everything around the k. Inverse, put it underneath. Direct, put it on top with it. And now, we can do the rest of the problem. So now it tells me when z is 12, x is 2, and y is 3. So let's plug all that in. So when z is 12, x is 2, and y is 3. And now I can solve for k. I can multiply the 3 over, and I can divide by 2. So now I have my k. And the cool thing is, now that I have that, now I can actually write my true equation. So you always go back in the end, plug that in, and that is going to be your equation. You never, ever, ever want on k in your final equation. You always want to get numerically what it is and then plug that in. All right? So let's do a couple more. So z varies jointly, so directly with both x and y. All right, so you always start with what's varying. So z is varying. And now this time, it's direct with both x and y. So this time, both x and y are going to be with my k. All right, so now let's plug in what I know. So here it tells me z is 20 when x is 5 and y is 8. So 20 is 40k because 5 times 8 is 40. I divide that 40 and I get my k is 0.5. It's okay if you get a decimal. Again, decimals happen. So now that I have my k, remember the final step is putting that in. So z is going to equal k, which is 0.5, xy. All right, our next one. Z varies inversely with both z, oh, that should be an x. I apologize. So please fix that. Those should not both be z. That should be an x as well. So z varies inversely with both x and y. So when you always start with what's varying, start with your k, and now let's place the other variables. So with both x and y, so inversely means both of them are going to be on the bottom. Remember, that's what inverse means. So now let's plug in the information that we know. So z is 5 when x is 3 and y is 2. So 5 equals k over 6. Multiply that 6 over, k is going to be 30. And remember, when it's asking for the equation, you always go back and plug in that number. You never want k in your final equation. You want to numerically get what it is. And now the last skill. So you also are going to want to be able to describe how z varies with other variables, okay? So when given an equation, you should be able to create a description of it. So here, you should be able to tell me that z varies directly with x, okay, directly because you see the x with the k, and inversely with y. And again, you know inversely because a y is on the bottom. Now there's one big thing here. You don't need to describe k, all right? You don't need to include the constant of variation in your description. Just mention the variables, okay? So z varies directly with x, again, because x is on top, inversely with y, because y is on the bottom. So there's going to be another little thing you have to do for me, is you need to be able to describe to me their relationship. All right. So again, I apologize, a little bit longer of a video, but there's a lot of good material in here. So thank you for joining me. Make sure you have everything written down and ask any questions if you still have any.